Good day, everyone, and welcome to our Smart Webinar series. And to today's webinar, Online Research Behavior, a Masterclass webinar. The webinar presentation will be 30 minutes followed by our Q&A session. I would now like to introduce our presenter, April Lamont, co-founder of InSite. April brings 25 years of Chief Marketing Officer level experience with blue-chip data-driven companies such as Kraft, Pepsi, and Armstrong. April also formed her strategic marketing consulting practice, serving the senior living industry. Welcome, April.
Thank you, Andrea, and thank you for participating in today's webinar. I'm really excited to share with you some findings and trends that we've observed and from data that we've collected over the last several years, tracking the behavior of people who are researching the senior living decision on community websites. We're seeing that we are in a time of change, and how people find sites, what they're looking for once they get there, how the website is supporting both the pre-lead, lead to sale process is an evolving one. So I appreciate your time, your interest in trying to get a sense of this landscape and how best you and your communities, your clients can really capture and grow based on these findings. Again, congratulations that you're here. What we find in sessions like this is we're dealing with providers who have a keen respect for the digital environment. You know that you're getting more and more of your leads and prospects from the online environment. You've invested in a branded website with a good web development partner. You most likely are doing online marketing, SEO, SEM, really efforts to try to get the best visitor to your site, the most appropriate visitor to your site, and then obviously help through that experience capture them within your lead base so that you have the opportunity to now interact with them. So this is all good news, and what we're really going to focus on is, in this webinar, is what happens once they get to your site. Just a quick plug on InSite, and I promise I'll make it very brief. We know you do lots of things to get people to your site, and our view is that shaping their experience once they're on your site can have tremendous benefit to helping to generate more and better qualified, better researched leads and ignite the sales process. So with that, let's get started. We recently completed a study, we call it ORB, it's Online Research Behavior, specifically focused on those researchers in the senior living space on community websites like yours to look across a broad data set. We've been collecting data for nearly 4 years on this site, tracking over 2.5 million people across 1,800 different community websites across a broad spectrum of care. And through the course of this time, you might imagine that we have amassed an enormous database from which to do analysis like this. So instead of what we normally do is focus on a client-by-client basis, we've aggregated all of this data to provide with you today a sense of what's happening on a macro level. And what we find are 3 key things, 3 key areas that I'd like to share with you today. The first is, how are visitors finding your website? How are they arriving there across different stages of their journey? What are they expecting to find once they're there? We're going to take a closer look at what that journey to conversion looks like. And I put it in quotes because, as you know, there are many stages in the sales process that are very meaningful and good indicators of a prospective new resident. In this conversation today, we're going to focus on what is that journey in the pre-identified visitor state, when they yet have not provided their name. What does that anonymous visitor look like who becomes your next lead? And then that lead, as we track that person from an identified state through to the person that decides to move into your community. And then finally, what are the kinds of tools, what kinds of content, what subject matters are we finding help to create the best leads in your system. They're pre-qualified. They have a good sense of who you are and if you're a good fit for them. So very quickly, we'll touch on each of those three key areas. This is a little bit about the research, the data set. We've covered that, so I'll just continue on. And into our first section of the study. And I think, Andrea, we have a poll for our participants to consider at this point.
Okay, the poll is launched.
All right, so one of the key areas that we're looking at is, how do people find you? How are your best visitors finding your website, and what kinds of content do they find once they arrive? And we've been tracking this over time around the four major sources of traffic that you see now in the poll. Paid search or paid media are those opportunities where you are creating a special message, whether it's in paid search or some kind of advertising environment where you are seeking to draw that visitor to you. Directly to your community URL would be noted as a direct visitor, someone who knows you, brand aware, who has typed your URL into the browser window. Organic search being people that put in search terms. They don't click on the paid ad. They click on one of the standard unpaid listings that are prevalent in all of the search environments. And then finally, referred from another site. In that case, it could be Facebook page. It could be any other social platforms. It could be a listing on another website that talks about you. What we're seeing is more and more of the people that find your site are coming from organic search. These are the people that have put in search terms and clicking on the listing, the unpaid listing that the search engines provide. Followed closely by people that know you by name. They may be brand aware because you're in their community, or they're aware of some offline type of efforts that you've done to build your brand awareness. And then followed by those referral sites, whether they're, again, social platforms or other listings where you may be present on other people's websites. And then finally, unpaid search, those areas where you are, in essence, paying to make your ad, your name, more prevalent. In terms of a trended basis, we are looking even more specifically at trended data over time. So how has that shifted? And even more specifically, we're segmenting out those people who are on the site for the very first time versus people who are returning to the site. So this data set here is looking at a first-time visitor and how that visitor is most likely to find you. And what you see over time is a decreasing source of traffic from a direct URL and an increasing increase coming from organic. There are a couple of factors that we see contributing to that shift. One is the Google algorithms, as we are all aware, have really given more prominence to having good content on your site that can help promote your SEO ratings. So we know that that's a key piece in terms of the structure of search engines. But we also just know from human behavior that people use organic search like a telephone book. You know, I might remember the URL and I might know the name, but if I start typing it into my browser, the browser actually helps me fill that in. So we're seeing more and more dependence or reliance on organic as a source, particularly for getting that person to your site for that first visit. Conversely, when we look at people who have come to your site before in the past, we see, of course, direct being the largest segment or source of your visitors, but in again, on a trended basis, organic is still gaining speed, if you will, is still increasing in importance at the expense of direct. And we tend to see this as a result of having brand awareness, knowing your community, knowing the URL. And so the play is really happening between direct and organic more so than on the paid search and referral piece. Those are nice add-ons, but they're not going to be the key drivers. And finally, what do they expect to find when they're there? We've seen over the course of time, and we continue to see this into 2016, websites are becoming more and more robust repositories of content, content that can be very helpful to that visitor who's trying to determine where your community might fit in their consideration set. And in particular, we're seeing that in both in page content, page structures, moving from single page content focus to, a longer page that has lots of different kinds of content within it. More call outs, more interactive content, and we'll talk about that a bit more in a little later in the webinar. But the key takeaway from this is that the website is becoming a more rich repository of information, and certainly across our view of our client base, more and more effort is made to try and make sure that the content experience is not just have sort of this broad brush of coverage, but depth of coverage around these key aspects of or key planks of content as well. What are visitors looking for? Why do they keep coming back? And you let me know, Andrea, are we in good shape here with the poll, or should we continue?
Nope, we're in good shape.
Yeah, so I mean, one of the questions that we're often asked, and I know many of you consider, is, okay, yes, I need to have great content in my site, but what kind of content? What are people really looking for at what stage in the process? And so, as we saw on the prior slide, we have bucketed these content areas around lifestyle and amenities, another bucket around information about yourself, maybe it's your blog voice, it's information about the community's structure, mission, vision, maybe the leadership team. The third area where we see a lot of content is around housing and residential types of information. And then finally, many more sites are including information about financial or pricing information. I guess the question is, at this point is, what area do you think is the most explored area of content on the site? And I'd invite you to poll in on that. Are we doing the ranking, Andre, or just the number one?
Just the number one.
Yeah, so the number one area of importance for your visitors among these four broad topics, if you just weigh in on which one you think is the most often explored.
Okay, we have most everybody that's voted, so I'm going to close the poll and share the results.
Please do.
For content area most explored, the top guess was financial and pricing information, and number 2, lifestyles and amenities.
So if you look at these icons as just symbols, housing obviously in the upper left, financial and pricing on the upper right, followed by lifestyle, wellness, a lot of the amenities related content, as well as information about you. The area that is the most explored and the first explored is housing and residential. I almost cannot implore you enough to have rich and deep content as it relates to what the residential product is that your community offers. And when I say that, it isn't just unit by unit, but it is the dimensions of what the residential aspect of the decision represents. And a lot of that is, telling stories about other people who live there already, people who have made a similar decision, who've struggled with is it the right time to move? Is this the right type of place? Where will all my things go? The whole issue of downsizing. Think about residential content as certainly being floor plans and that very specific types of information, but also more broadly. And that area continues to grow in terms of dominance from the point of view of the visitor to your website. Not only is it the area that they're looking for the most and the deepest content, it is the area that they're looking first. That is the area that if you can help them understand that, yes, your community offers them a place that they can call home, they will start to explore the other content as well. The second area that pops on this chart is the financial information. It is an early qualifying type of pursuit. Is there a place I can live that I'd be happy, and can I afford it? I know there's a lot of historical resistance to providing pricing and more specific financial information on senior living community websites. And I just cannot urge you enough to move past that. We live, and our prospective residents and those researching us live in an environment with tremendous pricing transparency. And the expectation of finding that type of transparency in our industry, from what we can see based on behavior, is absolutely consistent with what they expect to find on other sites. So while there has been hesitance because it's a complex decision, explain the complex decision. Financial information goes beyond pricing. So think about that holistically, and what you can see based here on behavior is that it is an important part of the pre-qualifying behavior for those who ultimately decide to provide their contact information. So that's a key thing, and I know we get lots of questions about that and what we see in our research and what we see on our client sites, and that might be an area we want to explore more in the Q&A, or I invite you to follow up with me after the fact. I do want to show you a little bit deeper information here. 4 sites that include pricing information, they have a richer experience. I'm going to, let's see, I don't know how to go back here. They do have a richer experience among their visitors. And those visitors who have qualified themselves financially on your site and convert are those people that who've already sort of checked the box. They either can afford it or would choose to afford it. They also very often might self-qualify out of your community. We have clients that have beautiful websites, a beautiful product, and many people assume they can't afford it. So providing financial information can also have the inverse benefit of helping people understand that, yes, indeed, they can afford and in fact could be very happy in your communities. One thing that we see in this question of what are people looking for when they come back to the website is that there is a changing trend among when people choose to convert. For a lot of the early part of the 2000s, late turning into the 2010s, there was a lot of effort put against trying to get someone to convert immediately on your site. A lot of it was give and get based. Come to this landing page, we'll give you a guide or something that of perceived value in exchange for contact information, I should say. And what we're seeing is that there were a lot of people who would convert, but the quality of those conversions were still pretty low. And we were hearing from a lot of sales teams saying, gosh, online leads aren't that good. These people aren't ready. They're too early in the process. So instead, what we've started to see, particularly among our clients, is a greater focus on shaping the experience for those visitors who are coming back as repeat visitors and giving them a chance to get immersed in your site, to do some of that early work, researching work, to determine that you're a good fit, so that they convert maybe on a 3rd or 4th or 5th or maybe later visit, that they're coming repeatedly as opposed to converting in the first session. We're going to talk a little bit more about the value of that type of approach in just a moment. So basically what we're seeing is, with a little bit more insight into the behavior and understanding of what people's expectations are across visits, that you do have the opportunity to align your content strategy to the needs of those visitors who have the highest potential to be your next lead. And sort of a headline coming out of this study, and it's been picked up by a few of our industry press, is that financial information is the most important information that you can provide to that visitor in that early stage, that pre-qualifying stage, to determine and influence a good quality conversion into your lead base. I can't really stress that enough. We see clients with lead bases, thousands of people in the lead base, and they have no idea if they're financially qualified. So allow the visitor to financially qualify themselves And when they convert, we can see that they have experienced this content. We can see that they've interacted with it. We can see that they have indeed had a moment in the privacy of their own home to determine whether or not financially your community is a good fit. Not only does it answer that question, but having the financial information on your site promotes a more robust visit and a more highly engaged visitor. Here it's just trying to demonstrate in this slide that a client's data from pre-including pricing data to post-including financial and pricing information on the site, how much more engaged that visitor is with all of the content on the site. So in essence, if I've checked the financial box in my mind as a visitor early in my session, early in my visits, then I feel much more freedom and interest to explore more and more of the content on your site. Again, the better researched, the better pre-qualified that person is to you, the more likely they're going to be a good fit once they're in your sales team's office. So a lot of what we've talked about so far is around that pre-qualifying process to determine whether or not that lead is or that visitor is going to become a lead. They're going to provide you with their contact information. What I want to switch slightly gears here too is now this is data of people who are in lead bases. They have self-identified. They are people that your sales team is working with. But I want you to be very aware that your potential new resident is continuing to use their the website very actively through this sales process. So yes, they use it to pre-qualify, but they also are using it to help make that sales decision. And this is a content profile of what they're looking at once they're a lead, marching towards a sale, and how that shifted over time. And while we've been talking about the importance of financial information, you see it kind of drop off the map here. And instead you're seeing things like housing, the residential aspects of the decision really start to pop. The lifestyle pieces, hold steady. The reason is because they've already determined they can handle the financial aspects of the decision. It becomes less important in their exploration, less important in their consideration of whether you're a good fit. So let folks make that determination, and as they march towards the final decision, whether it's a deposit or a sale, they're going to get more into the meat of what is it really like to live in your community. When we look at the types of content, this is a little bit of an answer to the question of, how important is video on my website? How important are galleries, interactive tools, maybe interactive maps, dynamic floor plans? What we're seeing in this journey to conversion, journey to sale, is that interactive content, immersive content is becoming more and more a part of the senior living landscape. Our tracking allows us to not only see that you have this type of content on your site, but watch the behavior of those people who engage in a way that become a lead, become a sale. And the question is, are those tools impacting a business outcome? And what I'd like you to take away from this chart is that the answer is yes. That not only are they devoting more of their time, more of their experience on the site to immersive content, but that in fact it does help shape the process to get to an outcome of creating a new resident. I'm going to shift here a little bit, and I think we have another poll, don't we, Andrea?
Yes, we do.
Okay, great. So most everyone that we meet with, we talk to, if I ask, are you interested in capturing more better qualified sales leads? I don't think I've heard a no yet. So really what we're trying to understand at this point in the discussion is, how do we affect that? So one question I have for the group in terms of a poll is, on average, for those people that submit a form on your site, how many times do you think that they come to your website before they submit that form? Again, this is all that anonymous visits where they're looking at all this content. They finally decide to submit a form. On average, how many times do you think that visitor has been to your site? Are we good to go?
Just a few more minutes. We're almost close to everybody voting. Perfect.
Awesome. So what we see is that people on average come to the site, 8 or more times. Maybe for some very efficient websites it might be 5 to 7, but I can assure you that for most communities it is 8 or more times. And you might be scratching your head thinking, gosh, what are they doing? Why is it taking so long? And I'd ask you to pause and reflect on the experience from that visitor's perspective. We're asking people to sort through a decision that most likely they've never made before. Our websites are full of lots of helpful content if you know what you're looking for and where to find it. And so people literally spend a lot of time over visit after visit after visit, sort of meandering through websites somewhat aimlessly, trying to make heads or tails of the decision, the important components of the decision, and how your community fits within it. And what we find is when we can reduce the number of visits to something in that 3 to 4 range, it has a phenomenal effect. It has the effect of capturing more form submissions from your most active, highest potential visitors. Why? Because we are choosing to intercept people in the middle of their journey. We're being very respectful early in their journey because we might not be right for them. Let's let them opt out at their own pace. But once they're sort of identifiably in the middle of the journey, then we do want to help those people make that session as productive and helpful and relevant to them as possible, thus reducing the number of visits needed for them to capture the information that could help them most determine that they're a good fit for you. How do we do that? And this is, I am going to talk a little bit about a proprietary tool that we've created, and it's created largely to help answer these kinds of questions. I keep coming back to your site. Now, what's relevant to me now? What do I need to know? Where did I leave off last time? Do you remember that I was here before? Now what should I be doing? I mean, these are the kinds of mindsets your visitors are in. What we've created is a tool, a product called Prompture that helps us from a systemic standpoint, a software standpoint, identify that highest potential visitor on your site. We interpret real-time what their behavior is suggesting based on that session and any prior session, so that we can then overlay messages within your website to help provide that guidance to connect them and guide them through that process. Well, what should I be looking at next? What do I need to learn next? Where was I on my last visit, and where do I pick up today? I'm going to show you first what it looks like. It's your website, and it is a mechanism that floats up from the bottom of the browser window that consumer or that visitor is in. It tailors a very specific message to that person based on where they are, where they've been in the past, where they need to go next, and provides a call to action to guide them digitally, as if we could take them by the hand to the kind of experience that's most helpful to them. So in this case, you land on the website. Promptures determine that you're a high potential visitor. We know a lot about you based on your past behavior. We decide that you, maybe have looked at this Vistas product on prior visits, as opposed to ask that visitor to sort through the navigation here to find the Vistas again quickly. We take the friction out of that experience and very quickly provide a mechanism to fast forward you right where you left off on your prior visit. We do the same sort of thing to help people create additional opportunities to convert, whether that's extend very special promotional offers. You might not want to put a free steak dinner on your homepage for every visitor, but for that very selective few that are your very highest potential visitors, you might happily extend a nice offer like that to get them to provide their contact information and get them to your campus and get them talking with both your team and maybe even some of your residents. The third area where we're using prompts effectively is in tracking inbound marketing visitors. So if you are doing paid search, the paid search campaign is great getting them to your site, but then you're pretty much leaving them to their own device. What we found to be very effective is to marry the inbound campaign with the prompting, the prompture, to help guide that person not just to the first click, but within the website as well. And what it accomplishes really is this notion of personalizing the website experience, or making your website intelligent to that visitor, whether they're still at the anonymous phase and hoping to elevate the best content to help them get to a conversion point. And ultimately in this way, we're getting those middle of the journey people to raise their hand, to say, yes, they are your highest potential visitor. Now let's interact with them very purposefully within the sales structure. At the end of the day, what we see are well-researched leads are a better qualified sales prospect. They close faster. They enable your sales team to move really beyond the pre-qualifying conversations into really more of the counselor selling kinds of conversations. What's needed to help take this online activity into the selling process is wrapping this prompter activity around each new lead, each returning lead, so that we can not just provide a laundry list of touch points on your website, but really distill and digest that information, all those touch points, into nuggets that reveal the interest and the level of engagement of that visitor, that lead with your community. How do we do that? We provide spreadsheets of information by name. When was the first time that person was on your site? When was the session that they converted? When was the last time they were on their site? What types of prompts are they interacting with? We have a mechanism to deliver that via a spreadsheet. The future, though, for us is, as an industry, is baking this online activity into the lead profile. And I'm working very hard with a number of different CRM providers to start to look at how can we make that CRM profile a more robust tool, not just capturing the information that your salesperson might collect, maybe appended data helps enrich, but also providing an online perspective of how they're using the website in their decision process to marry that off and online world together, really have a more complete and robust profile of that person. Finally, as we wrap up, I do want to make the point that a lot of the conversation is around getting more better qualified leads into your system, but once they're there, it's equally important to continue to track these leads, to continue to provide the next level of messaging. We know they continue to use the site as they're working through their decision process. So how do we use those insights? And we do to make sure that we are creating the kind of content experiences, prompt experiences that move them really constructively through the final decision process. So a few implications to wrap up. There is a tremendous opportunity now to take your website from a static tool, a static repository of information and content about your community, and make it more of a proactive tool and tailored or customized more to the individual who's visiting you to really create a more dynamic experience. An observation, people get lost on your website. We see it looks like they're moving around in circles and meandering, and so we have the opportunity now to be helpful and to be more constructive and to be more purposeful in guiding them through the sites. Ultimately, what we want to do is find those best visitors and just help them move forward. Sometimes moving forward means you're not the right fit for them. And what our sales teams have said is, gosh, I have more than enough people to work with. If you can help me get some of the people that aren't a right fit for us out of my line of sight, I know that I'm working with people for whom we could be a good fit. So part of it is helping people disqualify you, but to the end of getting the best people in the lead base moving forward. I mentioned this before. We do see that well-researched, pre-qualified leads using your website constructively do close faster. And then finally, I think the next frontier, and we're crossing that bridge now, is how do we take all of this great, what has been really in the purview of the marketing view of online behavior, and cross that bridge into the selling process to really ignite and sustain that process through to a constructive conclusion. So questions and answers?
Great. So right now we're going to begin answering the questions submitted during today's presentation. As a reminder, you can submit your questions to the questions pane in your attendee control panel. We have a couple of questions that came in during the presentation. So April, does your approach provide website content direction? So does it assess whether we have the right content and or enough content?
That's a great question. You know, we tend to create stuff and put it up, and we don't know if it's being really helpful or not, is it being utilized or not. And in fact, we don't consider ourselves the expert in creating the content, but we do provide a lot of direction, both in terms of what's happening on an individual website, but also leveraging our broader database to say what types of content have we seen be particularly helpful, where we can share that learning.
Terrific. And I know you talked about the value of providing financial information, and that's a big hotspot for the industry. So when you're talking about financial information, are you talking about just pricing, or is it more than that?
Yeah, I think that one of the fears that we confront in this industry is we're not selling real estate. So yes, people might be used to going to Zillow and seeing a house that has certain characteristics and a finite price tag associated with it. We're in senior living providing a much more robust product. And so while I think some pricing guidelines, dollars and cents ranges make sense, I think it's less about providing a price point as it is the information around the financial considerations of the decision. Because certainly the price point is one piece, but not all. Explaining contracts, understanding the tax implications, for example, are two areas that directly affect pricing or financial considerations that aren't, you know, a precise dollar amount to the 2 decimal points. So think about the kinds of conversations that you have in your offices today that relate to pricing and financial information. And what I would suggest is if there's a way to capture that kind of conversation, that kind of frequently asked questions around the financial aspects of the decision, that's the kind of robust information that people are seeking.
I've seen some great websites that provide information on how to finance. So whether it's the VA benefit, life care policies, how to get your long-term care insurance, but I think that, would you consider those as also valuable resources?
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. I would wrap that all around this idea of the financial aspects of the decision. And it really shows that and demonstrates to that visitor on the website that that you appreciate that it's you know, it's a complex decision. So maybe everyone doesn't need to see each element, but if you have the depth of content there, people will self-select into that as it's appropriate.
Great. We have one more question. What kind of results have you been seeing from Prompture?
Yeah, that's a great question. We run lots of different Prompture campaigns across a wide spectrum of clients trying to accomplish different things. Sometimes that's increase their visibility of their inbound campaigns all the way through to a sale and have that proper attribution. A lot of times it's gosh, I have these smaller units. I have these smaller one-bedroom units that are the plague of my occupancy. And April, helped me find the visitor on my website for whom this would be a great fit. So sometimes we're creating these campaigns or these prompture campaigns to find, really specific types of visitors for whom that could be, generate the kinds of leads to fill your occupancy needs. Or we have an expansion project, and we need to start to build a depositor base to really qualify for all the financial funding to take that from an architectural rendering to an actual completed project. So in each of those different cases, we've seen tremendous results. Generally, what I would say is overall we do see a sustained rate of at least 10% improvement versus a baseline, whether that's in finding specific types of leads or generally improving the number of leads. And clearly we can demonstrate that they're, the level of their pre-research. So, we talk about it in terms of more, but more better qualified leads.
Terrific. Well, thank you so much, April. That was fantastic. If any of you have any questions, you can contact April directly at april@leadinsight.com. And once you leave today's webinar, you'll receive a survey on the presentation, and we'd appreciate it if you would complete that, provide your feedback. You'll also receive a follow-up email within about 24 to 48 hours with a link to view a recording of today's webinar. Our next webinar is Recruitment, Engagement, and Culture, and it'll be on June 9th at 1 p.m. On behalf of Senior Living Smart and our presenter, we thank you for joining us today, and have a great rest of your day.
Thank you.